after my wife's funeral, I found a secret she never told me. A cottage in Tofino hidden and untouched just for us. 4 days later, a mysterious call made me question reality. My son dreamed of his mother, guiding us to that very place. Inside, letters and photos revealed secrets she had planned for years. Now, every wave and whisper of the wind reminds us she's still here. Hello, everyone. Before we start, join our YouTube family by subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to like this video and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now let's get into the story. The day after my wife's funeral, the house felt eerily silent, almost as if the walls themselves were mourning with us. The scent of lilies lingering from the service still hung in the air, mixed with the faint trace of her perfume on the sofa cushions. And my 8-year-old son sat quietly at the corner of the living room, fiddling with his toy car. He had hardly cried during the funeral. Instead, he clung to my hand, squeezing it so tightly I could feel the tension of his small body. Children often do not fully comprehend death. They sense the absence more than the finality, the emptiness more than the grief. I watched him glance repeatedly at the hallway, as if expecting his mother to appear at any moment, her soft voice calling out to him. My heart ached with every flicker of hope in his eyes, a hope I couldn't shatter but also couldn't fulfill. After everyone had left, the house felt heavier. The voices of relatives, neighbors, and friends were gone, leaving only the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the distant bark of a dog across the street. Silence has a way of magnifying grief. Each creak of the floorboard, each tick of the wall clock reminded me that she was gone. Not just gone on a business trip or out visiting family, gone permanently, irreversibly. I sat at the dining table, staring blankly at a stack of documents the lawyer had left for me. Bills, insurance papers, medical records, they were mundane, necessary, yet every paper felt like a reminder of what had been lost. Then, tucked between the routine paperwork, I found something unexpected, a property deed, a cottage in Tofino listed solely in her name, now legally mine. My hands shook as I examined it. I'd never heard her speak of this place, not once in 12 years of marriage. How could she have kept this from me? The address was real, the signatures authentic. Tofino, cold misty beaches, the smell of salt in the air, the sound of crashing waves. It sounded like a place she would have loved, yet she had never mentioned it. I sat there for hours, the deed trembling slightly in my hands, wondering if this was a message, a memory, or simply a secret she had kept for herself. My thoughts drifted back to Ayan, quietly playing with his toys on the carpet. Should I tell him? Should I even think about this cottage while he was grieving? His small face looked up at me, eyes searching, silent. He didn't know yet about the cottage, and perhaps it was better that way. Some mysteries, I thought, were meant to remain hidden until the time was right. I carefully folded the deed and placed it back in the envelope. The house remained silent, almost solemn, as if acknowledging our sorrow. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat by the window, looking out at the empty street, thinking about the life my wife had lived in, ways I had never known. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered that this cottage, this hidden part of her, might soon call to us in ways I could not yet imagine. The morning after I discovered the deed, the house felt strangely heavy, as if it were holding its own grief alongside ours. Ayan was at the breakfast table, poking at his cereal without really eating. His small hands moved mechanically, dragging the spoon across the bowl, while his eyes stared blankly at the floor. Normally, he would be chattering away about cartoons or his favorite superhero, but now, even his voice felt like it had been swallowed by the silence of our loss. I forced myself to speak in a normal tone, to keep the routine, to act as if life still held its patterns. Ayan, let's get ready for school, okay? Mom would have wanted that, I said gently, hoping he would respond. He simply nodded, barely lifting his eyes from the table. There was a weight in his small body, a sadness that had aged him overnight. After breakfast, I collected the deed from the drawer and examined it again. The cottage in Tofino was modest, yet the description in the deed made it sound charming. Wooden walls weathered by salt air, a small stone fireplace, in a large window facing the ocean. I tried to picture my wife there, perhaps sitting on the porch, looking at the waves as if she were having a secret conversation with the horizon. It was strange. How could she have kept this from both of us? Was it meant to be a private sanctuary for her? A place to escape, or was it always meant for us? To find solace after her passing? The questions swirled in my mind, unanswered and heavy. I glanced at Ian again. He was watching me, though his expression was blank. There was a quiet intelligence in children that often surprises adults. They sense more than we give them credit for. Perhaps he could feel my hesitation, the tension that came with knowing something was hidden, something important. But I couldn't tell him yet. He was already struggling to understand why his mother wasn't coming home. And the last thing I wanted was to add another layer of mystery that he might not be ready to handle. Some secrets, I reminded myself, needed time before they could be shared. By mid-morning, I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood to clear my mind. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of winter leaves and distant ocean mist from the coast. I couldn't stop thinking about Tofino, about the waves my wife must have loved, and about the idea that she had intentionally left this place for us without saying a word. Every step I took felt heavy with anticipation, and my thoughts kept returning to Ion. Would he ever understand why we hadn't gone sooner? Or would he blame me for keeping this secret? When I returned, Ion was sitting by the window, looking out at the empty street. I knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Buddy," I said softly, "we're going to have a little trip soon. Just you and me." His eyes widened slightly, curiosity mixed with uncertainty. I smiled, trying to sound casual, though my heart pounded in my chest. The deed in my pocket felt heavier than ever. Somehow I knew that this trip, this place my wife had left us, would change everything. And though I didn't yet understand how, I felt a quiet pull toward Tofino, as if the ocean itself was calling our names. That evening, the house felt quieter than ever. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the living room where Ian sat, his small hands clasped around his knees. He hadn't spoken much all day, but every now and then he would glance toward the hallway or the empty kitchen, as if expecting his mother to appear. I tried to keep him occupied reading a story aloud, but my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. I realized then that no story I could tell would fill the emptiness she had left behind. After Ion went to bed, I sat in the living room alone, staring at the flickering light of a single lamp. The deed to the Tofino cottage lay on the table before me, a silent reminder of secrets kept and promises unspoken. My mind wandered back to the day I found it, the shock, the disbelief, the uneasy curiosity. I couldn't understand why she had never mentioned it, why she had chosen to leave it entirely in my name without ever discussing it with me. Did she know she wouldn't be around to explain? Had she intended this as a gift for Aeon and me? A place to escape and heal after her passing? The questions gnawed at me, leaving me restless. Hours passed and sleep eluded me. The house seemed to breathe with the quiet rhythm of absence. I found myself imagining Ian standing on the porch of that cottage, staring out at the misty ocean, feeling the wind in his hair. Could such a place really exist, waiting for us, untouched and secret? My imagination filled in the gaps, the sound of waves crashing against jagged rocks, the smell of salt in the air, the faint cry of gulls circling overhead. I realized then that the cottage wasn't just a place. It was a bridge between what had been lost and what could still be found. The next morning, Ion woke unusually early. He came into the kitchen without his usual complaints, his small face serious. "Dad," he said softly, "can we go somewhere?" His eyes, wide and unblinking, held a strange intensity. I froze for a moment, taken aback. He had never spoken about wanting to leave the house. "Yes, buddy," I replied carefully, trying to sound casual. "We can go somewhere." He nodded, a faint smile brushing his lips, and returned to his room to get ready. I packed a small bag for the two of us, including a few clothes, some snacks, and the important documents tucked safely in my coat pocket. Yan helped without asking questions, as if he instinctively knew where we were going. The drive toward the coast was quiet, the road winding through forests and Small towns, the air growing colder as we neared the ocean. Yan gazed out the window, and I could see a mixture of anticipation and something deeper, curiosity. Perhaps even a connection he didn't yet understand. As we approached Tofino, the first glimpse of the cottage appeared through the mist. Wooden walls weathered by the sea, a stone chimney curling smoke into the gray sky, and a small porch overlooking the crashing waves. My heart pounded as I parked the car. Ion jumped out, his small legs carrying him forward, his eyes wide with wonder. I followed, feeling a strange combination of fear and hope. Whatever secrets this place held, I knew we were about to uncover them together. The cottage stood before us like something out of a forgotten memory, quiet and patient beneath the gray coastal sky. The air smelled of salt and wet wood, and the distant roar of the ocean filled the silence between Ian and me. For a moment, neither of us moved. I simply stared at the structure, weathered cedar walls, slightly faded blue window frames, and a narrow wooden porch that creaked softly in the wind. It didn't look abandoned. In fact, it looked cared for. That was what unsettled me the most. Jan stepped closer to me and slipped his small hand into mine. "Dad," he whispered, "it's pretty." His voice carried a softness I hadn't heard in days. I forced a small smile. "Yeah, buddy, it is." My heart pounded as we climbed the porch steps. I half expected the door to be locked, but when I turned the handle, it opened with surprising ease. Inside, the cottage was warm. Not physically warm, there was no fire burning, but warm in feeling. The living room was simple. A stone fireplace, a worn but clean couch, and a wooden coffee table facing a large window that overlooked the ocean. Sunlight filtered weakly through the clouds, reflecting off the water and casting shimmering patterns across the wooden floor. It felt like stepping into someone's preserved memory. I walked slowly through the space, noticing details that made my breath catch. A knitted blanket folded neatly over the couch arm, a ceramic mug placed carefully on a shelf, a small bookshelf filled with novels. I recognized books my wife had loved but claimed she had given away years ago. It was as if a hidden chapter of her life had been carefully stored here, waiting for discovery. Jan wandered toward the window, pressing his hands against the glass. "Dad," he said quietly, "it feels like Mom's here." The words hit me like a wave. I opened my mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Instead, I turned toward the fireplace, and that's when I saw it. On the mantel sat a framed photograph. My heart nearly stopped. It was my wife, standing on this very porch, smiling at the camera. She looked younger, her hair caught by the ocean wind. But what stunned me most was the gentle curve of her belly. She was pregnant with Ian. I stepped closer, my fingers trembling as I picked up the frame. I had never seen this photo before, not once in all our years together. Beneath it, tucked partially under the frame, was a sealed envelope. My name wasn't on it. Instead, written in her familiar handwriting were the words, "For Ian." The room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. Ian turned from the window and looked at me curiously. "What is it, Dad?" he asked. I swallowed hard, holding the envelope as if it might disappear. "I think," I said softly, kneeling down to his level, "Mom left you something." The sound of the ocean crashing against the cliffs grew louder, almost as if the sea itself was urging us forward. Whatever was inside that envelope, whatever truth my wife had hidden within these walls, was about to change everything. That night, after we had unpacked our small bags and settled into the modest cottage, Jan insisted on sitting by the large window, staring at the gray ocean. The wind howled outside, tugging at the edges of the wooden shutters, and the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks below filled the room like a living heartbeat. I watched him quietly, noticing the way his small shoulders rose and fell, how his eyes reflected both wonder and something I couldn't quite name, longing, maybe, or a connection he couldn't explain. As darkness fell, Ion finally turned to me, his voice small but insistent. "Dad, I had a dream," he said, tugging at my sleeve. "Mom was there, by the ocean. She was smiling and she said, it's time to go." My stomach sank. How could he have dreamed about this place? He didn't know anything about it. Not yet. We had never spoken of Tofino, of cottages, of oceans. Yet somehow in his dream, he had seen exactly what we had just arrived at. I kneeled beside him on the floor, trying to calm the sudden panic that surged through me. "Ah, Jan, dreams are tricky," I said gently, though my voice betrayed my unease. "Sometimes they tell us things we want to see or things we imagine. But deep down, I knew this was not one of those ordinary dreams. There was a weight, an undeniable presence in his words. I could feel it in the air of the cottage itself, the stillness, the way the wind carried the salt scent of the ocean, as if it were trying to speak to us. Jan's small hand found mine, and he squeezed tightly. But Dad, she looked happy. She said we should come here. My throat tightened. He was right. It felt as if the cottage had been waiting for us patiently for this very moment. I had spent 4 days hiding its existence from him, thinking I was protecting him from another layer of grief. But perhaps it was meant to be discovered now. Perhaps his mother had left a path, a way for him to connect with her even after she was gone. I stood and walked toward the fireplace, taking the envelope I had found earlier. The paper was soft, slightly frayed at the edges, as if it had been handled countless times. Jan followed, his eyes wide and curious, as I carefully opened it. Inside was a letter, written in my wife's familiar, flowing handwriting. My hands trembled as I read the first lines aloud, my voice shaking. "My dear Jan, this cottage was my secret sanctuary long before I met your father. I loved it for its quiet, its solitude, and its endless view of the ocean. I want you to have it, to know it, to feel it, and to remember that even when I am not with you, I am still near in every wave and every breeze." Jan's eyes widened as I continued reading, the words flowing into the quiet room like a lifeline. He leaned closer, listening intently as I read the parts, where she explained that this place was meant to be his refuge, a safe space where he could feel her presence. She had known her time with us was limited, and she had prepared this gift long before she told anyone about her illness. When I finished reading, Jan looked at me, his small face lighting up for the first time in days. "She wanted us to come here," he whispered. I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. For the first time since the funeral, I felt a fragile hope stir in my chest. This cottage was more than a building. It was a bridge, a message from her love, and a place where we could begin to heal together. The wind outside carried the faint sound of waves, rhythmic and steady. For the first time since we arrived, the cottage no longer felt like a place of mystery. It felt like a promise. The next morning, the mist hung low over the ocean, curling around the cliffs like a living thing. Jan woke early, more alert than I had seen him in days. He slipped on his little sneakers and grabbed my hand before I could even finish my morning coffee. "Dad, let's go see the beach," he said eagerly. There was a determination in his tone that caught me off guard. For a moment I hesitated, thinking about the jagged rocks below the cliffs, the cold wind, and the unpredictable tide. But then I realized he needed this. We both did. We stepped outside into the crisp Tofino air. The cottage behind us looked almost ethereal in the morning fog, its wooden walls glistening with moisture, the smoke curling lazily from the chimney. Jan ran a few steps ahead, then stopped to peer over the edge of the cliffs. "Dad, look at the water!" he shouted, his small arms flung wide, as if he could embrace the entire ocean at once. I followed him, my heart catching in my throat as I took in the vastness of the scene, the gray-green waves crashing against black rocks, the foam swirling like ribbons in the wind, the endless horizon where sky and sea seemed to meet. As we descended the narrow path toward the shore, the wind tugged at my jacket, carrying the sharp scent of salt. Jan ran ahead, laughing freely, the sound echoing across the cliffs and mingling with the roar of the waves. For the first time since my wife's passing, I felt a sense of release. The grief was still there, heavy in my chest, but the air of the coast seemed to carry it away, piece by piece, with every gust of wind. When we reached the sand, Jan immediately began collecting shells and small driftwood, his hands moving with a childlike wonder I hadn't seen in weeks. He paused often to peer at the water, as if listening to it, trying to understand it. "Dad, do you think Mom's here?" he asked softly. I knelt beside him, watching the tiny waves lap against his sneakers. "I think she is, buddy," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "She left this place for us. She's here in the waves, in the wind, in everything around us. He smiled a radiant, unburdened smile and ran toward a larger piece of driftwood. I followed at a slower pace, savoring the moment, noticing how the light danced across his hair, how his laughter blended with the natural symphony of the coast. I realized that this trip, this cottage, this place my wife had left us was exactly what we needed. Not to forget her, not to escape grief, but to feel her presence in a tangible way, to remember her love without the constant ache of loss. We spent the entire day exploring the cliffs, walking along the shore and collecting small treasures. Each time Ion discovered a new shell or piece of driftwood, he would hold it up and say, "Look, Dad, Mom would like this." And in that simple, innocent statement, I felt a connection to her that I had thought was lost forever. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in soft oranges and purples, we sat on the sand letting the waves wash over our feet. I looked at Ian, his small body relaxed, his eyes bright with the day's adventure. I knew then that we were exactly where we were meant to be. This was more than a trip. This was the beginning of our healing, and the cottage and the ocean beyond it was the first step. The next morning, the cottage seemed different, almost alive in the early light. Sunlight spilled through the large window, illuminating the wooden floors and casting long shadows from the furniture. The ocean outside churned gently, its waves whispering secrets we couldn't yet understand. Ian was already awake, standing by the window, his small hands pressed against the glass as he watched the horizon. "Dad," he said softly, "the water looks like it's moving just for us." I smiled, my heart tightening. There was something magical about the way children see the world. A purity in their perception that cuts through grief in ways adults can't. I decided that we should explore the cottage more thoroughly today. There were corners we hadn't yet seen, nooks where memories might be hidden, and perhaps more of her touches, subtle signs she had left behind. Ian followed me, a mix of curiosity and excitement in his every step. As I opened doors and looked through cupboards, I noticed small details I hadn't before. The neatly stacked blankets, jars of tea, a basket of hand-knitted socks. Each item was simple, yet it spoke volumes about the person my wife had been, the quiet routine she had cherished, and the love she had poured into even the smallest things. We moved into the small bedroom at the back of the cottage. The bed was unmade, but everything else was immaculate, as if she had been there only yesterday. On the nightstand was another letter addressed to me this time. My hand shook as I opened it. Her handwriting was delicate, familiar, and it seemed to reach out across the distance between life and death. She wrote about the importance of this place, not just as a cottage, but as a sanctuary for Ayaman and me. She spoke of the ocean's lessons, the ebb and flow of life, the inevitability of change, and the constant presence of love even when someone is gone. Ayan sat cross-legged on the floor, listening intently as I read aloud. He asked questions, small but thoughtful ones, about why his mother had chosen this place and what she had hoped for us. I tried to answer carefully, choosing words that conveyed love without overwhelming him with the weight of grief. And as I spoke, I felt a sense of connection to her that I hadn't allowed myself to feel since her death. This cottage, these letters, the ocean, it was as if she had built a bridge for us, a way to hold on without being consumed by sorrow. Later we walked to the porch, the wind tugging at our clothes, carrying the salty scent of the ocean. Jan leaned on the railing, eyes wide as he watched the waves crash against the rocks below. "Dad," he said, "I think Mom is here too. Can you feel her?" I nodded, holding his small hand in mine. I did feel her, not as a ghost, but as a presence in every wave, every gust of wind, every small shell that lined the shore. The day passed in a blur of exploration and quiet reflection. By evening, the cottage had transformed from a mysterious, almost eerie place into a sanctuary, a home of memories, love, and healing. Jan laughed freely as he ran along the shoreline, collecting driftwood and shells, while I followed at a slower pace, savoring each moment. The connection between us felt stronger than ever. The cottage, once a hidden secret, had become our refuge, a tangible reminder that though she was gone, her love remained woven into every part of this place. and guiding us toward the healing we so desperately needed. By the third day, the cottage had begun to feel like a true home, not just a place of mystery. The sound of the ocean outside had become a constant companion, its rhythm almost meditative, and Ian had grown more comfortable, exploring every nook and cranny with curiosity and joy. But it was the fireplace mantel that drew my attention again that morning. The framed photograph of my wife, pregnant, smiling, and radiant, seemed to command the room, as if insisting that we pay attention. Beneath it lay the envelope I had discovered the first day, now opened, but there was something I hadn't noticed before, a small folded note tucked inside. Delicate and thin, almost hidden from view. I unfolded it carefully, my fingers trembling. The note was addressed to me first, not a Jan. Her handwriting flowed with the same elegance I remembered. But there was urgency in the way the words were penned. This cottage, it read, is more than a sanctuary. It is a space where memories can live, where the past and the present meet. I want you to understand, not just for yourself, but for Ian. When he grows older, he must know that love doesn't end with death. It continues in moments, in places, in gestures, and in the heart. I paused, feeling the weight of her words. She had thought of everything, leaving guidance and comfort carefully hidden for the moment we could accept it. Jan, sensing the seriousness of the moment, approached me quietly. "Dad," he asked softly. I knelt down and held his small hands in mine, looking into his eyes. "Your mom wanted this cottage to be our place," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "A place where we can feel close to her, even when she's not here." His eyes glistened, but he nodded, understanding far more than I could have expected. Children have a way of sensing truths that adults often try to hide. I decided we should explore outside again, and this time I led Ian to a small path that wound down toward a hidden cove. The path was narrow, flanked by moss-covered rocks, and the sound of the waves grew louder with each step. When we reached the cove, the ocean opened up before us, a vast expanse of gray and blue stretching endlessly. Ian ran to the edge of the rocks, laughing and shouting with delight. "Dad, it's like Mom is calling us here," he exclaimed. I watched him, feeling both awe and an aching grief that was now softened by a sense of connection. Near the shoreline, I noticed the small items that had been left, intentionally: a smooth piece of driftwood, a carefully shaped stone, a shell with an unusual spiral pattern. Each seemed like a quiet message, small gestures meant to communicate presence, to remind us that even in absence, love can reach us. Yen collected them carefully, placing them in a small basket we had brought along. "Mom left these for us," he said, almost as if he understood the language of the sea. By the time we returned to the cottage, the sun was low, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The fireplace now held more than just warmth. It held memories, guidance, and a tangible reminder of a love that had shaped our lives. That evening, as Ion played quietly by the window, I felt the weight of my wife's foresight. She had known, in ways I could not fully comprehend, that we would need this place. And in giving it to us, she had given a gift far greater than I could have imagined, a chance to heal, to connect, and to carry her love forward, even in her absence. The morning of the fourth day, the air was thick with the salty scent of the ocean, and the mist hung low, curling around the cliffs like a protective shroud. Jan woke up early as usual and ran to the window, pressing his small hands against the glass. "Dad, it feels like she's here again," he whispered. I smiled softly, though my heart ached. I knew he meant his mother, and somehow I felt it too. The cottage, the ocean, the wind, it all seemed infused with her presence. This was more than nostalgia or memory. It was intentional, as if she had planned every detail to guide us, to reassure us that her love was still with us. I decided it was time to finally sit down with Jan and share more of the story, what the cottage meant, why it was here, and how his mother had thought of us long before her illness became apparent. We sat on the worn couch, the large window behind us framing the rolling gray waves. I held the letter in my hands again, feeling the paper's texture, its fragility, as though holding on to it could somehow make her presence more tangible. "Ian," I began carefully, "your mom left this cottage for us. She wanted a place where we could always feel close to her, even when she wasn't here. His eyes grew wide and he leaned closer, listening intently. "She'll plan this?" he asked softly. I nodded. Yes, she knew she would get sick, and she wanted us to have a place to heal, to remember her and to feel safe. Every item, every corner of this cottage. She thought of it for us. He absorbed the words quietly, his small face a mixture of awe and understanding. "So, she knew we would come here?" he asked. "Yes, buddy," I replied, squeezing his hand. "She wanted us to discover it together, to connect with her in ways we couldn't in the house anymore. We decided to explore the little wooden shed behind the cottage that I had ignored before. Inside, it was clean, surprisingly well kept, with small jars of herbs, paints, and notebooks filled with sketches. These were things she had used when she needed quiet, reflective time. Jan picked up a small notebook, flipping through pages of drawings of the ocean, the cliffs, and the cottage itself. "Look, Dad, she drew this," he exclaimed. I nodded, my throat tight. Each sketch seemed like a piece of a puzzle she had left for us, carefully arranged so we could find her love and presence in every detail. Later, we walked to the edge of the cliffs again. Jan skipped along the path, collecting shells and pieces of driftwood. "Dad, she's here with us, isn't she?" he asked, his voice earnest. I paused, looking out at the endless gray waves. "Yes, buddy," I said softly, "she is. And she left us this place so we can always remember her, talk to her in our hearts, and feel her near us." By evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson, Jan ran toward the shore, laughing freely. The wind carried his voice across the waves, and I realized in that moment that my wife's gift was far greater than I had imagined. She hadn't just left a cottage. She had left a space for healing, a bridge between the living and those we love, and a reminder that her presence would always surround us, even in her absence. That evening, the cottage felt alive in a way it hadn't the first day. The ocean waves crashed rhythmically against the cliffs, carrying a sound that felt like a heartbeat. Jan ran along the shore, laughing freely for the first time in weeks. I watched him, feeling a mixture of grief and gratitude. This place, this gift from his mother, was exactly what we needed. I sat on the porch, letting the wind whip around me, carrying the salted tang of the sea. Everywhere I looked, I felt her presence. In the waves, the wind, the driftwood, and even the laughter of Ian. I called him over and knelt beside him. "Your mom wanted us to find this place," I said softly. "She wanted a space where we could feel close to her even when she wasn't here. And she wanted us to heal together." Jan squeezed my hand and ran back to the water, his laughter echoing across the cliffs. I realized then that this cottage was more than a building. It was a sanctuary, a bridge from grief to hope. As the sun set, painting the sky gold and crimson, I understood the depth of my wife's foresight. She had left us not just property, but a place of love and memory, a tangible way to feel her presence. That night, as Ion slept peacefully, I sat by the window, staring at the moonlit ocean. For the first time since her funeral, I felt a sense of peace. The cottage had given us a gift beyond measure, a place to heal, to remember, and to carry her love forward. In the wind, in the waves, and in our hearts, she was still with us. And in that realization, I knew we could face the future together, carrying her memory and love in every step we took.